case you didn't know, American knife manufacturing has been under fire. Our overseas competitors have absolutely been giving it to us in almost every single category, except for one. Nothing quite says made in America like a really good out the front switchblade. How's it going, everybody? I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny. And today we're talking about this guy. This is the Heretic Cleric 2, an American-made, badass, out the front switchblade. Is it overbuilt? Yes. Is it too big? Yes. Does it epitomize everything that's awesome about American-made switchblades? Oh yeah. If you decide at any point that you want to pick one of these up, make sure to head on over to dnknives.com. That's where this bad boy is from. Shout out to them for lending it to me so that I could bring you the goods, so that we could get the scoop, so that we could talk about things like, is it worth the price? Let's find out. So if you decide to pull the trigger and spend the 434 big ones to get yourself a Heretic Cleric 2, this is what will arrive in the mail. We've got a standard looking box with this hexagonal pattern on it, the Heretic logo, made in the USA, so you can feel good about your purchase knowing that even though you spent a lot, that money's staying right here in the good old US of A. If you're not from the States, you might not understand, but since we export a lot of our business, that means that we like to know when our money stays here in the US, because that's good for the local economy and it makes sure that somebody was paid fairly, or at least that's what we would like to think. On the side here it says Cleric 2 double-edged black with breakthrough blue. Let's go ahead and check it out, and you'll notice right off the bat that it's got this a little bit of Velcro right there that keeps the box shut. That's pretty cool. Upon opening the box, we have this foam liner, which is nice. It keeps everything nice and protected. It comes with this little bottle of sample-sized OTF lube, which I think is pretty fantastic, given how many people always ask me, hey, what should I use to lubricate my OTF? And yes, every time I make an OTF video, I do get asked that question. And I'll reveal to you a little later on what I like to use for my OTFs. Then, of course, the star of the show is in this little pull string baggie. It's a nice soft case, says Heretic Knives on it, continues that theme, but the real star of the show is what's inside. This is the Heretic Cleric 2. Almost 10 inches of straight bald eagle American goodness. And oh my goodness. Wow, would you look at that? We've got 4¼ inches of MagnaCut, of CPM MagnaCut. So not only was everything manufactured here, but when you see CPM, that means that it was made by Crucible Industries. MagnaCut is a steel designed by an American named Laren Thomas. That's Dr. Laren Thomas, and he is a metallurgist. So MagnaCut is very, very popular. Now, disclaimer, I have no idea what they heat treat this MagnaCut to. If it's between 60 to 62, it's good, but it's not as good as it could be. And if it's higher than 62, it's way better than what it's rated to be as far as edge retention is concerned. Aside from that, it is considered a super steel, powder metallurgy, and of course, it comes in this package. Just look at how big this guy is. This is beefy. Now, the frame is aluminum, and this inlay right here is steel. But this inlay pattern is way different than what we're used to seeing. It's got these little bulges that bulge out, and they actually provide a really comfortable amount of traction for your hand. And yeah, if you're seeing that, guys, you'll see that my hand doesn't even get anywhere close to engulfing the handles on this blade. This is basically a pocket lightsaber. You want to talk about pocket swords? Well, here you go, because this thing is, well, it's beefy and it's overbuilt. And it's made right here in the US of A. And, you know, whenever I hold an OTF like this, it does make me proud. Because While other knife companies are absolutely killing us in the folder game, and yes, I said it, and if you want to debate that with me, I'll meet you in the comments section. But when it comes to OTFs, nobody, and I mean nobody, does it better than the United States. And that is not just patriotic rhetoric, that is a fact. American companies, American OTF companies create the gold standard, period. Whether you're talking about a Grant and Gavin Hawk, or Microtech, or in this case, a Heretic Cleric. Let's talk about the lockup real quick. Does it have some blade play? Yes. And even though Heretic is owned by Tony Marfione Jr., he has changed things, and this is a bit different than what you would see from a Microtech. It has a similar style switch. It also has a nice beefy switch spring. Now, what does that mean? That means that if you don't have strong fingers, you probably will struggle opening and closing this. However, the type of crowd that this knife draws tends to be those that aren't afraid of putting a little bit of pressure on a switch. And guys, it is so satisfying. This is much smoother than any Microtech that I've handled. And I've handled Microtech Cypher, Troodon, Combat Troodon, Ultratech. It's good. It's deceptively powerful and smooth. They've done a good job on this. I also actually really like this clip. This is a ball bearing clip, and over the years, Heretic Knives has done a good job of renovating the style of this clip and making it functional, but also good looking. It does not get in the way of the ergos at all. And the ergos kind of are a pick your own story type of deal, because while it does have a few swells in here that encourage your hand to mold around it, it's not going to tell you directly where to put your hand. This is going to work great in a backwards grip. It's going to work great in a regular grip. And the problem that I have with most double-edged dagger blades is that you cannot, or at least you should not, put your thumb on the back of the blade because it's double-edged. This is a dagger. You know, this isn't a sheep's foot. It's not a Warncliffe type blade. This is meant to do some stabbing and to do some damage. And one look at that needle-like tip, and oh my lord, that will go through a lot, guys. It'll go through a lot. That is absolutely fantastic. A sign of a good dagger blade is when you look at that medial ridge, you want to see it go directly to the center of the blade, because if it's off, and a lot of times they are, it typically means that it wasn't ground evenly, and it's really easy to not grind those blades evenly. But in this case, that medial ridge is perfect. That looks absolutely fantastic. I'm not sure if this is a powder coating or if this is a DLC. DLC stands for diamond-like carbon, by the way. I'm not sure what type of coating this is, but it is fantastic. That is a good looking coating on this blade. So it's going to stand the test of time. MagnaCut is fairly corrosion resistant. It's got great edge retention, and it's got decent toughness. You put that all in an OTF, and all of a sudden, MagnaCut seems like a really good option for this type of knife. And it needs to be, because again, American knife manufacturers are competing against some really good manufacturing coming from overseas. And I really enjoy the fact that you could tell they're pushing the boundaries. Some of you might be thinking, well, I wish that it was titanium instead of aluminum. Let me tell you something. Aluminum is so underrated. It's more lightweight, it's just as corrosion resistant, and it can be just as tough. Maybe not as tough typically, but it kind of depends on the type of aluminum you get. In this case, I like the fact that it's anodized blue and it's got this black. It kind of looks like the lightning is trying to escape the handle scales, and I can't help but think that because I've got a vivid imagination. In fact, I almost missed it, but if you look closely right here, you might see that there is some etching right there. Just like Microtech, Heretic Knives actually serializes their knives, and this one is serial number 997. That's cool. I love the way that it looks like the blue is poking through from the black. That's just absolutely killer, and it feels good in the hand. The action is good, and it's a good example of what an American-made OTF should be. It should be unapologetic. It should be intimidating enough that you can't just deploy it at will like a fidget spinner, because when you do deploy it, people around you will know that you mean business no matter what that business is. So what I'm saying is, if you have one of these, definitely don't do it at the grocery store. Just the thought. Most people that buy these knives, I'm assuming, are going to be using them responsibly, or at least they should, because that is a whole lot of cutting edge, and it's just so freaking cool, man. Given the design language, this knife is meant to be used. It's meant to be abused. If you don't believe me, there's plenty of videos out there on the internet of people beating on and abusing their Microtechs and their Heretics. They're both built with the same sturdiness and rugged use case scenarios in mind, where, you know, they can be batoned through logs. They could be, you know, pile drived into wood and then have the blade switched out without snapping the tip. That's impressive. The type of beating that these are built to withstand. And the sad part is that a lot of people will say, well, I just don't trust the lockout mechanism. When it comes to reliability, this one has not failed on an ejection or on a retraction, and I've deployed this a number of times. If you don't believe me, just look at my thumb. My thumb has told the story. I've deployed and undeployed this and retracted it several times. I'd probably say somewhere in the realm of 20 to 30 times, just in an attempt to see if it would fail at all, which it did not. The action always impresses, as well as the length of this blade. My goodness, that is a big knife. Let me give you a comparison. Here is my BRS Kopesh, which is also a big knife, and it's bigger than that. What about if I were to go ahead and compare it against, I don't know, what about a Demko 80 20.5? It's not even close, guys. The handle scales are almost as big as the entire Demko. So what does that mean? It means that if you do buy this, you need to be conscious of where you carry it. Some places don't allow OTF knives, and some places will allow them, but they just can't be over a certain length. I have a feeling that this won't be legal in California, but this is not legal advice. Seek your own counsel. And finally, a design element that I haven't talked about yet, but I think is worth talking about. Check this out. On the end, there is a glass breaker. That glass breaker is easy to miss because it's unassuming. Unlike many Microtechs out there and Benchmades, this one isn't some pointy thing that sticks out and jabs your hand every time you go to reach in your pocket. This is unassuming. It's there if you need it, and if you don't, you barely notice that it's there at all. That is fantastic, and they have to get some props for that, because a lot of times when I see a glass breaker on an OTF, I think to myself, that's only useful if you're in law enforcement, because law enforcement and firefighters are going to be the ones that use things like glass breakers the most. The rest of us just have it on our knives and wonder why. So yeah, do you like the Heretic Cleric 2? Are you going to consider one if you're looking for an OTF knife, or do you live in an area where that's just not possible? Do you take pride in knowing that there are American-made knives out there that are still held to a high standard and still perform at an excellent level? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Let's make it a discussion. Guys, if you liked the video and you've watched this far, please consider subscribing. I'm Rollshambo. I'll catch you on the flip side.